Dispatches from Planet Funk. This is the A-Style Podcast, dedicated to all whom the man tried to ace out. By profiting from the soul, without stopping to give props to the prophets of soul. That's correct, I'm Ace Allen, a.k.a. Barack Wayne. I'm getting ready to talk to Linda Shider. I just finished interviewing her, as a matter of fact. She's the P-Funk Queen who's visiting us from Columbus, Ohio. She's fresh off a triumphant comic book signing at the Funkadelics Ball. She sold out copies and made an instant collector's item out of her new comic book, Diaper Man. Starring her husband, legendary and longtime band leader, GARRY Shider, as the titular character. But more on that later. Speaking of Funk Queens, you guys, our last episode, episode 31, that was a great episode. That was with Dawn Silva, another Funk Queen. She told me, actually, I don't know if she's just being nice or it's true, she told me she sold a lot of books from that episode. So if that's true, I'm proud of that, and thank you, Dawn. I do think there's a couple things I could have done better with that interview, so I hope Dawn will come in again soon. I kind of chickened out asking her questions about Charlie Wilson. As you guys may recall, if you saw that episode, or if you've read her autobiography, there's some shocking revelations about the behavior of Charlie Wilson. And she kind of mentioned after the interview, actually, when we were talking to her, myself and Scott, my friend and executive producer, she mentioned that she was ready to talk about that. So hopefully we can talk to her about that in the future. Coming up, by the way, you guys, and by the way, sorry I was gone again for a long time. There's always something going on. We're going to try to do episodes more regularly for you. Next up is Shauna Hall. Remember Shauna Hall? She stopped by when Dawn Silva was here. She's a guitarist. She's a P-Funk guitarist, a founding member of Four Non-Blondes. She's going to come in here and she's going to play some music. We also have another P-Funk guitarist. I won't tell you what his name is yet because I don't want to jinx it. Scheduled to come on as well. He'll be coming out here from Detroit. Shout out, wink, wink. But forget all that because, you guys, I have a very important announcement, and you guys are going to be shocked by this. I was really happy to see this, and this is one of the most proudest moments of my podcast career. So I got this email, right? And the title of the email is, A-Stout Podcast is ranking very well in Sweden. I opened the email, and the email says, "Hello, how's it going? Hope all is well. I have some cool information that might interest you. Your podcast, Aced Out Podcast, has good performance in Apple Podcast rankings. You're in position number 79 in the category of music interviews in Sweden." Oh my God! Number 79? By the way, there's only 78 of those shows in Sweden. You know what, guys? I'm being a little facetious, but I am proud of that because it's guerrilla marketing. We don't have a big, budget like Jimmy Fallon or something like that. The fact that we would actually rank in Sweden, I take great pride in that. I take that seriously. As a matter of fact, I think this would be a good moment to show my appreciation, Grace. Grace, if you could do me a favor, I want to play the Swedish national anthem. There it is. Way better than ours, by the way. Listen to that. This is important. Listen to this part. One more time. You're so funky, Sweden. You got funk and you got soul. Skål! Got the best meatballs I've ever tasted. One more time. And I want to shout out, you know why we're so popular in Sweden? I bet you it's that dude, Andy Eric Englund. He's got a group called the Neon Romeos, a funky group in Sweden. And I know he's hip to Aced Out Podcast. I've gotten some messages from him before. So that's a shout out to you guys. I'm going to defect. I'm moving to Sweden. I want to be a Swedish citizen. So maybe you can put in a good word for me. By the way, I want to say goodbye to Stitcher. Stitcher was like one of my favorite podcast apps to use to listen to different podcasts. I really liked how the Aced Out Podcast was on Stitcher. They went out of business, y'all. They stopped being a thing last August. So goodbye. Bye, Stitcher. I really like Stitcher. You can still listen to audio-only podcasts, though, on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. I know our Sweet LD episode is still very popular. But what I really want you guys to do is like and subscribe. Like and subscribe our YouTube channel. We almost have enough members where we can monetize. And we could do more shows for you and give you more funk history. Please like and subscribe the Aced Out Podcast YouTube channel. And I want you guys to leave us a comment as well. I also want you to do me a favor. I want you to go to acedoutpodcast.com. And I want you to find our link to merch. Excuse me, I'm getting thirsty. I have my Aced Out Podcast mug here. This is a large size one. We also have smaller white mugs. We have an array, as you can see behind me, of shirts, hoodies, hats, and we even have swimming trunks, if you could believe that. You could get those, find those at acedoutpodcast.com. That's ACEDOUTPODCAST.com. Get some of our merch. It's really high quality and it ships to you really fast. In the house, we're here at legendary Different First Studios here in the heart of the Mission in San Francisco. Grace Coleman is behind the board. Grace Under Pressure Coleman, I like to call her. Behind the camera for Zon Media, we have Dominique and Don. Per usual, my buddy and executive producer Scott Shepard is here. But without further ado, I want to talk to Linda Shider. She's coming right up and she'll be sitting right over there. All right, y'all. We're about to shine our flashlight on another funk queen. Talking about the longtime spouse of the legendary GARRY Shider, who's also a gifted piano player in her own right. She's one of the very few credited female songwriters in P-Funk. She's contributed original material to such albums as One Nation Under a Groove by Funkadelic and The Pleasure Principle by Parlay. Before getting with the P, she was a professional model and actress who has appeared on screen in many Hollywood films. Her past bands have been Legs with a Z, which she had before she got into the P, and also Children of Production with her spouse and Gary Mudbone Cooper. She did an album with Gary in 2017, Tale of Two Funkies, which I love. It's a great compilation, and you can get it on Amazon, featuring such songs as Knockin', Glory of Love, and I Remember. She also has a couple sons. One of them, Marshall, is a family man who used to do beats for George. And another, Garrett, who tours with George currently. Scott and I just saw him perform last February, as a matter of fact. She's up to exciting things lately. She's promoting her Diaper Man comic book. Look at this. Featuring GARRY Shider, Diaper Man, as the titular character. She almost sold out her copies of this book, so it's a collector's item already at the Funketeers Ball last month. And now, all the way from Columbus, Ohio, please welcome Linda Shider, aka Linda Legs. Hi.
What's up?
How are you doing?
How are you? I'm good. I'm really good.
I'm so glad you're here.
Glad to be here.
Okay, first I want to ask you about is the comic book. So how did you put this project together?
Well, it was just a concept I had been milling over for a couple of years because I always remember when Gary was flying on that little thin wire over the stadiums and coliseums and stuff, how scary it was to look up and just like, please God, don't let him fall. And I felt like since he was the one that volunteered to do it, that he earned some credit for that. You know, it was kind of like a superhero idea. And the way he did it so proudly and so courageously, and he'd be flipping over, and I'm down there, you know, my heart's in my mouth, and like, please God, let him come down in one piece, that kind of stuff every night. It was scary to me. And they took me up on it one time, and I really realized how high he was going and how little everybody looked below. And the courage it took, I just thought he deserved that kind of momentum. And it was his 70th birthday in July, so I figured it was a good time to do it.
Nice. Wow. Happy birthday. It's a beautiful thing. Are you going to do any follow-up, I hope?
We had intended to, but the two guys that designed it and did the artwork and stuff, they're both kind of like over-committed right now. And the printer that did it for me, he's went out of business. And I don't know if the template is still available, even if I wanted to do more of that one, you know? So it kind of was an idea to do 2 or 3 more, but it kind of doesn't look like it's going to happen.
You hear that, guys? So it's a collector's item, and there's very few left. I'm glad I got mine.
Only 4.
Only 4 left? Okay. I wanted to ask you about the diaper itself, because I never thought about that. I've seen Gary perform so many times over the years, personally myself, as band leader for P-Funk All-Stars. When did he first start putting the diaper on, and what kind of was it? Was it a cloth one, a plastic one?
It was always a towel. He was, you know,
It's a towel?
sometimes it was a Holiday Inn because they'd stay at the Holiday Inn a lot, so it'd have the Holiday Inn logo down the middle. But basically, George did it once, and Gary looked at it and said, because he, you know, with the pacifier, he was always like a perpetual in baby mode kind of thing, you know, so he just figured that would be a perfect outfit, a new kind of concept for him to go with. And once he started doing it and everybody liked it so much, he just kept on doing it.
Was he flying free underwear? Or did he have underwear underneath there?
No, he did not. So, you know, sometimes the willy would kind of pop out if the diaper was too small, you know, if the towel was too small, rather, you know, so it was kind of scary sometime as well. You know, what was going to happen. Oh, shit.
It was
Oh, God, here we go. Oh, look at that. You know, all the groupies would be like, yes.
By the way, another thing I really want to hear about that I mentioned is the Funketeers Ball. How are those events? So they have, how many of them have there been? Like 3?
This year was the 7th.
The 7th.
Okay. In the beginning, they were getting a lot more of a crowd. During COVID, of course, it kind of backed off a lot. People weren't, you know, showing up in group, things like that. So
and it's in Maryland, right?
It's Bethesda. That's how you pronounce it, Bethesda.
Bethesda. Sorry,
So
Bethesda.
last year and this year, the crowds were not as big as he anticipated they would be. So the girls, Dawn and myself, and some of the Parlette girls, and George's niece, Shirley Clinton, who has some nice stuff out herself.
Yeah.
And she's self-producing.
I know her,
She's
yeah,
doing
sure.
all her own stuff. We're thinking that maybe it might be a good idea to get the girls to come out and perform this time, and maybe bring in more people.
Right on, because it sounds like a great event. You said Michael Hampton's pretty dedicated to that event, right?
Yeah, he seems to show up every year and play with whoever has been booked for the show. Last year, Shirley and I worked with a guy named Tony Cam, who was also part of the, the coalition that puts it together.
Yeah.
So we all performed with him last year, and I did with this time unexpectedly, because when I walked up to say hi to some of the guys I knew, they were like, "Get on up here." And I'm like, I didn't come to, and just put them like pulled me up there. I'm like, okay, I'll go, you know. And it was kind of fun, you know.
That's a real positive thing. I'm really glad you all are doing that, those kind of events, that kind of scene. I'm glad you guys keep that together. That's a real beautiful thing.
Yeah, because every year it's like certain older members of P-Funk, people that aren't with the group anymore, they're always involved in some of the bands that play. So I get to see some people I haven't seen in years, you know. It's kind of cool.
That's
And the fans are
phenomenal.
real good too. They're great. The
Are
ones that
they?
show up, they want autographs, they want pictures, and it's really nice. It's a nice event.
Do you remember the venue that it's at?
It's called it used to be called the Bethesda Blues and Jazz Fest Club, but now they call it the Bethesda Theater. They
The
changed the
Bethesda
name.
Theater?
And Earl Cecil, who owns the place, he used to manage P-Funk. He was tour manager for a few years. And he bought the club. He used to live in California. Now he's moved to Maryland. And he opened the club, I think, maybe 3 years ago. Because he used to have the ball at a different venue. And they decided to go with his club because it's bigger. It's kind of like more like a supper club kind of atmosphere. Kind of like the Howard Theater has turned into.
Right.
Kind of got the same kind of setup.
Well, that's groovy, and I hope all of you keep doing that. Keep everybody that supports the funk, we all appreciate that. And I'm just trying to do my little bit over here. You're a piano player, right?
And I play a little bass too.
Okay. I heard that I saw some interview or something. You said at one point you said you wanted to be like a Black Shirley Temple.
No, that's what my mom wanted me to be.
She wanted you to be?
Yeah, she had, because from 3 years old, she had me going to talent shows doing I'm a Little Teapot. That was my go-to thing to do. And I think by the time I got to be about 5 or 6, there was a guy that went on ahead of me that was playing piano. And I decided to have a little temper tantrum and said, I'm not going on unless I can do that. And my mother was like, are you kidding me? This is not the time for this, okay? And I said, I'm not going to do Teapot unless you promise to let me get piano lessons. And she said, okay, just go on and do your thing. So I'm like, okay. So I got my way, and I took piano for about 3 years. We had one at home, but then we had to move because they decided they wanted to turn our neighborhood, which was very multicultural. We had Italians, Poles, Germans, Spanish people, all kind of people lived in this nice little hood, and we were all really close and friendly. We all went to school together. So
Is that in Columbus?
In Columbus, because that's my original hometown. Mm-hmm. So they decided they wanted to make a freeway ramp into our neighborhood and destroy it. So everybody had to move and relocate. And it was kind of sad because we had such a close unit. It was, like I said, everybody kind of ate with each other and played with each other. And it was really very diverse. And so, of course, everybody went hither and where. So that was the end of that. My mom couldn't afford to move the piano, so we left it there. And I didn't have one for years. I didn't get another one until I got married to Gary, and he got me a baby grand. And I was like, awesome.
He got you a baby
loving it.
grand? That's
Yes.
beautiful.
Yes. When I was in college at the University of Maryland, I would go into the music lab and practice and kind of refresh myself on theory and that kind of stuff. And I would go in there every day after school and stay for a few hours. And then by the time I did get my piano, I was kind of cool again with it.
Wow. Because that turned out to be really important later. I want to ask you, so when you guys got married, you moved to Atlanta, and you lived there for a while, like about 15 years and stuff?
Yeah, we lived there until my mom passed away, and since she was living in Maryland, and I'm the only child survivor, so I had to go up there and sell her house, deal with the estate, and I had gotten Garrett into Duke Ellington while we were there, because there was a lot of gang stuff going on at the time in that area. And I was
Garrett went to Duke Ellington music
he went
school?
to Duke Ellington, And once I got him in, I didn't want to take him out and move him back down to Atlanta, so we decided to stay.
That's a wonderful opportunity.
Yes, it was. It got him very comfortable with the stage, and he was in the show choir, so they performed all over the place. They went out of the country sometimes at the White House.
Wow.
And it was their show was really nice. They'd be all in tuxedos, and the girls would be in gowns, and they just looked so cool doing this little dance steps and stuff. And so it got him very comfortable with being on stage.
Who did he play for at the White House?
Who was it? It must have been, I think it must have been during the Bush era, I would remember, if I remember correctly, during Bush. I know it was before Obama, so it's probably Bush.
Got you. What period of your life was it when you were appearing in like films and commercials and TV shows? Because I knew you did that for a while.
That was in Atlanta. That was like, I guess maybe in the 80s.
Okay.
Because I did a couple of In the Heat of the Nights, which was produced in Atlanta. I did Daniel Day-Lewis's first movie called Stars and Bars.
Yeah, I saw that Stars and Bars with Harry Dean Stanton and
Stanton,
Joan Cusack.
John Cusack and Daniel Day-Lewis. That was his first American film.
Wow, that's crazy. And what were you like preferred extra in those? Or
Yes,
what did you do?
Because I got a lot of camera, and it seemed like every time I did something like that, the camera just seemed to follow me. You know, I was like, they must, and I'd be like, why are they always in my face? You know, with all these other people around, and everybody would say, you look good. I'm like, okay.
Were you in RoboCop?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, RoboCop. The one with the wrestler
Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan, that one.
No Holds Barred.
No Holds Barred. I was in that. Yeah. I had to scene right next to Nancy Allen in the RoboCop one. And she's sitting there bopping. And I said, what are you listening to? And she said, it's James Brown. I'm like, cool, you know.
Cool. What's it like working on a movie set? Is it like boring or is it like fun? Or?
It's kind of fun because while you're waiting for your scene, you're talking to other people and getting to know people. And sometimes they're giving you other jobs that are available to go check out. And you just find ways to like keep yourself occupied, keep your energy up.
Did it pay well at the time? Was it a good gig to have?
Yes, indeed. I'd never made less than, say, 150.
Wow.
And I had a very good agent, and she kept me busy. I did so many things, commercials, TV shows. I think I told you about the play I was in, Foreclosure.
Yeah.
And we did that at the Alliance Theater in Atlanta. Then we took it to New York for about 3 weeks, and it was a little theater in the Village. And it got very good reviews. It was called Foreclosure.
I read a crazy story that you like drove up on a Klan rally one time, like almost like right into it.
Right in the middle of it.
That sounds frightening.
It really was, and I was by myself too.
When was that?
This was probably in the 80s, and we were living in Newt Gingrich's area where he represented.
Newt Gingrich?
And he used to walk down the street all the time. We'd be walking like he owned the place.
You would see him?
See him all the time. But like I said, we had just moved to this area called Riverdale, Georgia.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah.
So I'm going out to go shop and fill the refrigerator up, turn the corner on this street called Highway 85, right into the middle of a Klan rally. They're got the hoods on, they got guns on their hips, and I was so shocked at
Guns
first.
on their hips. Oh my God.
I didn't know what to do. I just kind of paused for a minute, and I was like, and I was by myself too, so I really was kind of scared. But then after I thought about it, because I had never seen the Klan except on television, before this.
Sure.
So here they are, right in my face, and at first it was like kind of took my breath away. Then I got pissed, and I just started gunning my engine, and I'm like, okay, you're going to either let me through or I'm going to plow through your butts. You know.
Started revving the engine.
So they let me through. I got home. I said, Gary, I think we need to move. He said, we just moved in. What's wrong with you? And I told him what had happened. And he said, well, we can't let them run us out. We're going to be okay. But they did burn a cross in our yard one night, and they used to follow us home.
Sorry, say it again. Sorry. Did they burn a cross in your yard one night?
On Thanksgiving
On
Eve.
Thanksgiving?
Mm-hmm. And I didn't see it. Gary told me about it a couple of days later because he knew I was already uncomfortable in it after all the stuff that was going on.
What do you mean you didn't see it? How did you not see it?
He made sure I was asleep. When he got up in the middle of the night to do something, he saw it and he took it down and got rid of it real fast.
Wow.
Yeah, he didn't want me and the kids to see it because he knew it was a bit scary.
Oh my goodness. My goodness.
And like I said, they used to follow us home with their high beams, like they wanted to see where we lived. It was that area was very intensely Klanish.
Wow.
And we didn't know it till we moved and, till we got there. So we stayed in that place about maybe 2 or 3 years. Then we moved to another area.
Wow. Yeah, I bet moved to another area. Mm-hmm. Wow, that sounds amazingly intense. I'm kind of like stunned by that, just trying to picture that. And
you can imagine. Oh.
That was a big thing, Gary, to take everything down and not even upset you all.
Yeah,
that's
he didn't
amazing.
want us to be afraid. It was already uncomfortable, so that would have been taking us over the edge for sure.
Let me ask you, because I think you're the person for me to talk to as far as I never really got straight when Gary entered the group. So was he in the group United Soul, they were called?
Yes, it was him and Boogie. I think there was a girl. I don't know. I think she was from Triano. I don't know her name. But that's when George finally decided he was going to put him and Boogie into the group.
So first they had their own group at first, right? And then he pulled them in.
United Soul was theirs.
Was Glenn Goins also part of that?
No.
Okay, he wasn't part of that. Was anybody else like that we would know in United Soul?
No, I don't remember who was the drummer or the girl I told you was in the group. I never met her, so I don't know her name. But I think it was just maybe a 4-piece. So they had a drummer, him and Boogie on bass, Gary on guitar. I don't think the girl played anything. I think she was just a singer, backup singer or something.
Did United Soul do that song "Be What You Is"?
They did When I Miss My Baby.
When I Miss My Baby.
That
Okay,
was,
okay. Because I think I have an old Westbound compilation that I think I got one of their songs on.
Okay.
So I'm thinking like Canada had something to do with that group, or did I
Yeah,
have
they
that
were
wrong?
all living in Toronto. They went to Toronto to escape the draft because it was still
Okay,
Vietnam was still
right.
going large and heavy. So they went to Toronto on George's recommendation. So they moved up there, and that's when they really got seriously into the P-Funk family.
Nice. And maybe there might have been a little room because Eddie and Billy.
They
They're
would come
doing
and go,
yeah.
because they were, the drug thing was really heavy with them. They were, doing heroin, and they just weren't as reliable. Like when I first met George in the group, it was Mudbone. No, not Mudbone. It was Bootsy and his brother Catfish, Harold Bean on bass, Tyrone Lampkin playing drums, and of course, Calvin and Fuzzy and Ray and George. That was the group then. But that's around the time when Bootsy decided he wanted to go on to his own thing. And that's when I think he brought Eddie back.
Right.
He brought Billy back. Billy would come and go. Eddie would do the same. They'd stay for a while, then they'd move on and do something else and come back and go. And they were always welcome because George had a lot of respect for their music.
What did you think of the P-Funk thing, like before you were in it or before you knew them,
my
when you're just
God,
kind
I
of aware
thought
of it?
They were like, to me, they were like the Black Rolling Stones.
The Black Rolling
their
Stone?
aura, the way that they did their, the way that their vibe, basically, I guess, they were just so intense, and they were real sexy on stage. They were real sexy, and so that's kind of that was kind of my love for Mick Jagger and the Stones.
Sure.
I loved watching him do his thing, walking around, across the stage like he owned it.
You're pretty rock and roll. You had a
Yeah.
group that you led called Legs, right? With the
Yeah.
Z? What was being a band leader like for you? You didn't like it? You liked it? or-
It was okay. I wasn't really, like a strict person because, I'm feeling my way through just like everybody else. And the reason we broke up, we had a big show coming up. And I had brought them up to the house to rehearse. And by then they had gotten a little ego-y, because we were getting a lot of success. We were like Andy Young's go-to band when he was running for mayor. We did all his events.
Oh,
We had done this
Atlanta. Yeah.
thing at Piedmont Park, rather, which was like about 20,000 people ended up on the news. And we're like, so they're starting to like get this thing going on, got this ego going on. So I said, we're going to rehearse. And like I said, we got to fix a couple of things. And they quit on me. And I was like, and then they went and did the gig without me.
Oh.
So I was crushed. And I was like, oh, Gary said, well, you were coming off a little strong. I said, I was just trying to get them to rehearse. I thought we had a couple of things we need to plug, holes we need to plug. And he's like, well, I think you fixed that one real good. And I'm like, thanks a lot, fella,
You were together at that time. When did you guys, or where did you meet? Where did you meet Gary?
I met him, when I met George and them, I was a flight attendant with Pan Am.
Oh.
And so, since I had met them out here in San Francisco, quite by accident.
You met them here?
I had a friend that had just moved here from D.C., and she had gotten married and had a couple of kids. And so I said, I'm coming to San Francisco for a couple of weeks. I got some time off. And she said, well, come on out. But she said, since I'm married and stuff, if you want to really get to see the city and have some fun, I want to introduce you to my friend Vera Oliver. So Vera had dated Bernie for years before he got married.
Bernie Worrell?
So they were coming out, and she said, you can come over. She said, but I'm having George and Bernie and Ray Davis are going to be staying here if you don't have a problem with it. I said, hey, I love that group. I'd love to meet them. So she said, well, come on out. So we all stayed there, and Vera was driving them to their shows in her little Volkswagen bus.
Volkswagen
So
bus.
we're all cozy, comfy, and riding around, going to Berkeley and here and there, Then George flew us all down to L.A. to this wild party, and he had these two girls with him. They were from Boston, and they were like, I don't know how intense, how much you want me to talk about stuff like this.
It's up to you. I love to hear about it.
Okay, well, the girls, they were Rachel and Debbie. They did a song about Rachel called Trash A Go-Go. So they were like his go-to freaks, I guess. I don't know how else to say it. And so we go to this party in LA, and it was kind of a really wild party. A lot of drugs, a lot of people doing whatever. And so the two girls, Rachel and Debbie, decided to go in the bathroom and make love to each other. So
Wow.
all the fellas go into the bathroom, and so me and Vera and her cousin said, "Well, we got the coke. We'll just sit here and have it." While they're doing their thing, we'll just sit here and we'll just have our own little party. So we didn't go and watch. Vera kind of peeped a little bit. She said, "Girl, you won't believe what's going." I said, "I kind of think I know, so I'm good, you know." So anyway, they kept in touch with me. And when they would come to D.C., they'd stay at my place, and I'd have a trip or something. I said, just don't burn it down and, take care of my stuff. And they did. They'd wash the dishes. I'd come home, and it would be nice and neat. So one time, before I was going to a trip, they had come over. George was there. I think Ray was there. And Gary came over to borrow some money. So I went over to change a record, and he said, nice ass. So I kind of heard it, and I'm like, okay, but I had a boyfriend at the time, so I wasn't really trying to go there. So the next time I saw him, like I told you, the production company we worked for, we had booked a show with Weather Report, the jazz group.
Wow, yeah.
And they didn't show up. So my boss is freaking out. We had sold out the place, and he's like, Linda, call some of your friends. I'm like, well, who do you want me to call? I said, oh, I know what. I said, P-Funk's in Philly. Maybe I can get them to come. So I called George, and he said, sure, we'll come and do it. So they came and did it. That's the second time I saw him. He was like, he said he saw me in this dress I had on, which was really kind of cool. And he's like, I like that girl. And so people were telling me that he was saying these kind of things. And I'm like, well, I'm still with my boyfriend. I'm like, I don't know, I'm not going to do that. The final thing was my roommate at the time. She was doing taxes for Fred Wesley. She and Fred, and she was dating Rick Gardner, one of the Horny Horns.
Rick Gardner, yeah. I interviewed him one time.
So she was dating him, and she said, well, I have Fred's taxes. Would you mind running me to Baltimore so I can drop him off? I hadn't seen the guys in about maybe 2 years. So I said, sure, I'll go over. I haven't said hi to everybody. I haven't seen them in a long time. So we go to Baltimore, went to the show, and Gary was like, the Washington Post is going to take a picture of me putting my diaper on. Would you help me do that? And I said, no. I said, my mother looks at the Post. If she sees me doing something like that, I'll never hear the end of it. I'm not doing that. So he said, oh, so good. So after the show, we go back to the hotel, and this guy's in the lobby saying he's going to shoot George about some girl he thought he was messing around with. So Gary pushes me in the phone booth. I'll protect you. And I'm like, oh, my hero. He's protecting me from gunfire. So he finally and I'm getting ready.
So he really was Diaper Man.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was something else that kind of stayed in my mind, that whole concept. Okay. So I'm getting ready to go home, and my car won't start. So he said he went in the bathroom and said, I got her at last. So we went to this party that they had for Michael Hampton. I think Dawn mentions it in her book.
Right.
So we go over to the party. And
Same party?
No, this is another one. This is in Baltimore.
Okay.
So we're looking at same kind of vibe though. So anyway, we go in there and it's all dark and kind of looking kind of creepy. And so Gary said, we're not going to stay long. I said, I'm kind of glad. I don't think I really want to be here. And so we left and went back to the hotel, and we decided we were going to be a couple.
Oh,
From then
my
on,
God.
we did our thing, and we decided we were going to keep in touch. And eventually he's like, come on the road with me. And then, so I would drive and follow the tour bus. And then it got to the point, or he'd fly me into different shows and stuff. And so the first time I actually performed with them was at Madison Square Garden. Because once again, someone in the crowd was shooting, and all the girls got scared and ran off the stage. And he grabbed me and said, come on out here and get on this mic. And I'm like, okay. You sure it's okay? He said, sure, go ahead. I got you. So I ended up on the cover of Rock and Soul magazine because of that show. I said, why would they decide to put a picture of me? I mean, it seems like unknowingly, a lot of times I was getting looked at or getting kind of like...
You caught people's eye, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And I didn't even realize it because I'm just being me, doing my thing.
That's amazing. That story's so romantic and crazy. That needs to be a comic book all in itself.
He's like, I got her at last. I said, you really did that? He said, yeah, I went in the bathroom. And he said, I was like, oh, finally,
Eureka. Speaking of Red Hot Mama, that was your tune to do live after a while, right?
Oh,
You didn't just sing it
yeah.
you sang it more than once, right?
Yeah, I did it a lot. And it's always been my favorite. And I just added a little something personal on in the beginning just to make it kind of my own thing, you know? So I did. I started off, let me tell you a story da-da, about a smoking hot girl da-da, on her way to Savannah. Da-da. Let's call her maybe Hannah. And she bumped away. And she humped away till she got there. Oh, yes, she did. I said she humped away. And she bumped away till she got there. Yes, she did. And that's how I started. And then
Wow. That's a lot more
I put
than
my
I
own
thought.
spin on it.
That
you
is
know?
your own spin. And that's cool. Oh my gosh. That reminds me. So let me ask you then. Let me jump to that. One thing. Okay. So our 5th episode of this podcast, I interviewed Jim Wright. Calls himself JW now.
JW, yeah.
And one of the songs that we picked of his that he played on, and we opened it up to the show as kind of a theme song, and I really like it, is Are You Dreaming?
Okay.
The Parlette song. And I just love that song so much. I think it's so cool. And I didn't realize that you're the writer of that.
Yeah.
And so I just want to ask you about that. First of all, it's so unusual because I don't know if this makes sense, but it almost reminds me of like David Bowie or something. It's like a mid-tempo, like freaky. It has a beautiful vocal. Can you tell me about that? Like, how did that come together? What's the idea of that song? Like, just tell me about it.
We were in the studio at United Sound in Detroit where we recorded most of the P-Funk stuff.
Right.
And I think they were either starting a song or they were editing or something. So I was there's a baby grand in the hallway. So I just started playing. And George came by and he said, I like that. And he said, Gary, he said, figure out the chords and stuff and let's go record that bad boy. And he said, I think I'm going to use that for a parlette. So I hadn't even gotten to the lyrics yet. So once I heard the whole musical thing gelling, that's when I came up with the lyrics.
What are you thinking of? What are the lyrics about? I love it so much. It's so unusual but catchy.
It was a love song. A lot of the stuff that Gary and I did were that kind of that material, kind of love song, because we were so in love with each other. You know, we were hot and heavy, and we just kind of like shared it with people.
That's beautiful. There's another love song that you did that I don't think you kind of weren't too happy about.
The Doo-Doo Chasers.
The Doo-Doo Chasers from, which by the way is it's cool as hell. Love it. But I see what you mean. So that's got that was like a slow romantic love vibe too.
Yes.
Did you and Gary write that together?
Yes.
I'm talking about the One Nation album. And when did it come to your attention that the lyrical ideas putting over that?
When Gary finished the vocals, George came in, he listened to it, and he said, that's too sweet. That's too...
What vocals did he record?
You're as sweet as any flower. He did the whole thing. He did all the lyric vocals on that. And so we thought it was finished. George came in and listened to it and said, no, that's too pretty. That's too sweet. We got to put some stank on it. When we heard it afterwards, after we heard his input, we were both furious. Like, how could you basically destroyed a beautiful song and turned it literally into shit. Literally into shit. That's how I approached him. And he's laughing, thinks it's funny. But I was pissed. And every time someone asks me that, I have to remind myself how angry that made me. That he basically destroyed that song.
Did you destroy it?
And put it on and put it on the record like that.
Did you, or did he ever get a chance to redo it, or like the way you intended it, or
no?
You
But
just said,
other groups have been doing it. There's a group a white rock group in Portland, Oregon.
Okay,
they've done it without the doo-doo stuff on it.
So people can tell.
Other people have always approached me and said how much they liked it without that stuff on it, and a lot of different groups are doing the song. So it makes me proud.
I like when he says fear of being eaten by a sandwich. I like that one. But I could see that because it's actually so beautiful. The guitar lines on it. And that's there's a lot of rock feel on stuff that you bring, like rock and pop. Yeah. Didn't Gary say that you kind of like a pop writer? Like you bring like the pop feel?
That's what he told me. I brought the pop to the P-Funk because what I hear in my head is that kind of stuff, you know? Like I said, I grew up on rock and roll.
Right.
The Beatles and Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin and all those kind of guys. They were my guys. I loved that music.
Didn't you even in legs like do like Black Sabbath
Yes,
covers
we
and
did.
stuff?
We did Black Sabbath. We did AC/DC. I sang Back in Black.
Back in Black.
I sang that one, yeah, Back in Black. We had some originals that were kind of on the rock tip. I don't know if you got a chance to see It Don't Come Easy on.
Yes.
Did you get a chance to hear it?
Yeah, yeah. I heard,
Okay,
heard
that
the
was-
whole thing.
That was like one of our originals.
Did you the intro to that? Again, that's another one. I'm talking about It Don't Come Easy. It's put out by Legs. Did you write that intro?
Yeah.
Because again, it's like it's crazy. It's almost like Queen or like Bohemian Rhapsody. It's like it's really intricate.
Yeah, that was.
What's the influence of that? Or
I don't know where that
you
came
coming
from. It just, like I said, when the juices were flowing, they were flowing. And, you know, I can't really tell you everything that made me put stuff into my music. It would just be a feel I had or something that I heard in my head, and I just throw it out there.
It's really something else because when somebody says like, "Hey, I write songs or whatever," you're like, "Cool," but you know, when I hear the stuff that you come up with, it's always it's challenging but catchy. It's a little above average of, I don't know. You have the musical training is evident.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
How did it feel because I talked with Dawn a lot actually on the unfortunate side of P-Funk women not getting credit, not getting props. And we're going to talk more about props later because I want to talk with you. I know you have opinions on that. Just, you know. And then, so how did it feel for you? You were credited on things you did. Were you credited on everything you did?
Not everything.
What other things are you
I did-
uncredited on?
Okay, like I think Bernie's album, The Woo Warriors, All the Woo
Love
in the World,
that.
rather. I didn't get credit for the vocals I did on that. I think there was another one called The Sweat Band, went on Bootsy's
I love
projects.
Sweat Band, yeah.
I don't think
You're
I
on
got
that?
credit on that stuff either.
Those are two of my favorite albums.
Yeah, I did both of them. I don't think I got my name on either of those albums that I know of.
Any other writing credits or something that you think you should have gotten? Or
No, I think everything that I did, I got credit for.
And
in the writers.
You and Gary just plain like did a lot of stuff together, right?
Oh,
And like
yeah.
over the years, all different kind
Yeah.
of formats, like reel to reel, ADAT.
Sure did. Did.
Is that what some of the Tale of Two Funkies albums
The
is?
Tale of Two Funkies, those were we had done those, I think, on the computer Pro Tools.
Right.
So he made discs, we had discs of those. All the other stuff is either on cassette, it's on reel to reel, or it's on ADATs. And those kind of things are kind of hard to find these days. Everybody's doing computer stuff now, you know?
At some point, you have a lot of insight into things. There's things I can ask you about that I don't think I could get from anybody else. So we're talking about props, right? So I saw somewhere that you were talking about how the funk doesn't really have a retirement fund.
Oh.
And then just like how it's organized. So I know people are still like struggling to make sure they're still out there, still getting gigs, still getting money in their pocket. What's your experience been with that, especially since Gary passed away?
Well, since he passed away, things have not been great for me. I've been able to work sporadically. I had to lose my house. I lost my husband, then I lost my house.
That's just wrong.
And there's a situation in the Maryland, D.C. area where the rent is just so crazy. They don't have any kind of rent control or anything like that. And after I lost the house, I got into an apartment building. And I was comfortable there, but they had this thing where they kept raising the rent every year. And then they got to the point where they had outstretched my budget. And I had to move in with my son, Garrett. And that kind of humbled me because I was always very self-sufficient. And I didn't like having to depend on someone else to have a roof over my head.
Right, sure.
And it just got to the point where him and I weren't getting along. So I moved with my oldest son to Columbus in April. And I'm still hoping that something's going to pop off and I'll be able to get back on my own because my stuff is still sitting in his garage. He doesn't have enough room for my things that I've kept. And, of course, every time I move, I had to downsize. And I've lost a lot of things that I really liked. Furniture.
Right.
Different, like, knickknacks and stuff, things like that. And so
I really hate to hear that. That actually bothers me. Just when I think about like all the times I've seen Gary perform, like dozens and dozens, I don't even know how many, and How many years? Because he was like the band leader, right?
Band leader.
How many years did he have that role? It's like over 30 years, 35 years.
I'd say at least 35. He had already started before we got together, so that would have probably been in the early 70s. Like I said, when Eddie and them were coming and going, he was the only one that stayed and hung in there. And it got to the point where he was like the one that opened up the show, get the crowd pumped up.
Right. Yeah, I remember. Like
in
a
the
whole
studio,
thing.
he would be the vocal arranger. He'd produce because
Leading-
most of the time George was out doing drugs somewhere or sleeping with some chick.
I heard he like basically produced like Trombipulation.
Yeah, yeah.
Every time I talk to somebody else in P-Funk, they always talk about Gary. His name comes right up, unprompted. He did this. He did this. He was great about this. Both of you, everybody remembers you both fondly.
Well, that's touching. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm very interested in how that worked. So no better person than you to ask. So, what did that look like? Gary being band leader, like, did he warm up new members? How did he work? Because I know he's like kind of a humble guy. You said.
Yes, he was.
So, like in a leadership role, like I'm trying to picture that. Like what did it look like?
One of his favorite sayings was, "I'm no better than my surroundings."
No better than my surrounding.
He said that all the time, and so
What do you
when
mean by
George,
that?
He was like, "I can't do what I'm doing unless there's people around me that are keeping up." Basically, you know. So when new people would come into the group, he'd kind of try to like help them feel their way into what they were supposed to be doing. And another thing he always say, get in where you fit in. Don't oversing, don't overplay, just kind of blend, go with the flow. He knew how to get the best out of people.
I can imagine that. It sounds like it. How often did you guys rehearse for shows? Because like the shows would be going on. I would have to leave. I saw one show at the Maritime Hall. After 5.5 hours, like I was out. I have to go home now. I know there'd be like multiple drummers like changing, so it would just keep coming. So like, what was the situation for preparing for a show like that? Was there a set list, or you guys just go, let's do this song, or?
The set list usually ends up going out the window.
Right.
Because George would, we'd say, well, we're getting ready to do Red Hot Mom. No, we're going to do Standing on the Verge. And everybody, but what about Red Hot Mom? Standing on the Verge. Okay, he's changed it again.
Yeah, right. And then
we
it
would
goes
rehearse
sideways.
for like a big show, like when they brought the Mothership out. We went up to this place called Fishkill, New York, and we rehearsed for about a week or two.
Fishkill.
There's a prison up there.
Wow. I never heard of that. That's cool.
It's like way upstate New York. So we rehearsed the Mothership tour at that spot. It was like an airplane hangar.
Wow. Oh,
So
yeah. I
it
heard
was
of that.
big
An
enough
airplane hangar.
big enough for the spaceship and stuff to fit in. So we know what to do and when to come out and all that kind of stuff. But
Oh, my
normally
God.
we didn't rehearse. We know everybody knew the stuff, so we just whatever he called out, we just do it. George, I'm talking about.
Who was all operating, or how many people would have to operate all that stuff?
Oh my God, the crew for the spaceship, the Mothership tour was intense. There had to be at least 20 extra technicians and stuff. One person flipping up the switch to make him go up and down. Another one taking care of the spaceship, and then there was a little spaceship that used to go across the place. One time it caught fire.
Oh my God.
And we were sitting there cracking up. I said, they finally burned that mother.
They burned that mother. Wow. Did Gary ever get hurt flying around or anything like that?
No, he didn't. But like I said, every time he did it, my heart was in my mouth until they brought him down on back to earth again.
I saw something. So speaking of props again, I saw something where you were saying you would try to get Gary to stick up for himself more. You would often like push him for this, that, and other publishing, whatnot.
I'll tell you something.
Go ahead.
One of the first things that George told me when he saw me getting closer to entering into his group was, don't ever discuss business with my band. This
what
was
do
the
you
night that we booked him when Weather Report didn't show up.
Okay.
After he paid everybody, and him and I were sitting, and my boss were sitting in the room. And he said, don't ever discuss business with my band. I said, why would you not want them to know how to take care of their publishing and stuff? That's my business, and it's none of their business. And that's how he put it. So I would always kind of like, I could make deals for Gary with other people, but he would never let me confront George about maybe a pay increase or something like that. he would say, he said, you're going to like turn them off and it's going to probably blow up in your face anyway, so just leave that alone. He said, I know how they're going to screw me. I don't know if I hook up. Well, I'll give you a perfect example.
Okay.
When Lionel Richie left the Commodores, their manager came to him and offered him $1 million to sign with him and replace him. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm like, are you crazy? He just offered you $1 million.
Wait a second. Gary was offered to replace Lionel Richie in the Commodores?
Mm-hmm.
And he's offered $1 million for that.
$1 million. And the guy said, sign me with me and I'll give you $1 million. And he said, and I'm not going to screw you. And Gary said, I know how they F me. I don't know what you're going to do. I'm not going to do that. No thanks.
By the way, how did Gary get on their radar for that gig? That's fast.
We just happened to be at a show. They were at the Fox Theater in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And we went to the show. I think there was somebody else. I think maybe Cameo was on there. No, the Barcades. And him and Larry were real tight. So we went down to see the Barcades, and Commodores were on the show as well. And so we're backstage, and the guy said, I know you. You're Gary Shider from P-Funk. And he's like, yeah. So he started talking to him, and I was standing right beside him when he offered him that money, and he turned it down. And I said, Gary, he just offered you $1 million. George is paying you, what, $150 a show, and you're going to turn that down? And that's what he kept saying. He said, I know how they're screwing me. I don't know what I'll be walking into with them. And so I'm not going to do that. And he did that every time someone else came up and offered him another option. He wouldn't go.
You know what? I always wondered about that because, I see people go in and out, come and go with P-Funk, but Gary would always be there consistently year after year, show after show. And I always wondered.
He loved being in that group. He loved it. And he had a thing for George, like a father figure kind of relationship with him, even though it was only one-sided. Because George,
What do you mean?
When George wanted someone to join his group, he would wine and dine them, give them girls, whatever they were into, drugs or something. And once they got into the group, he would just like, oh, now you're just like a miscellaneous puzzle piece. I can replace you. There's always somebody in the wings that's going to wants to do your job. And he would kind of divide and conquer. So he did the same thing with Gary when he first met Gary. Gary was like 16. He wined and dined him and took him to all these weird places, sex stuff and all kind of crazy stuff. He went to see a girl screw a donkey. And he told me about that, and I said, I can't even imagine. Where did something like that take place? And I was like, he took you where? Oh, my God, And once he got into the group, he was like, he just used him like he used everybody else.
Did you guys clash? I mean, you and Gary, did you guys clash about that? Or did you just try to nudge him? Or did you really try to?
I always tried to push him, and he would just, after a certain point, I could tell I was wasting my time. And also, sometimes when he was willing to make a change, George would have his people go to whoever was trying to take him out, and he would intimidate them or threaten them.
Wow. Tell me about, so what is it, Bridgeport Publishing? They would take most of the money?
Yes. There was a deposition when this guy, Nenny Montez, the one who did the Chango in Paris, that I told you about,
right.
He was the one that put that together. And he came in as a management with George for a while. And so he sued Armin. And Armin did a deposition, and I got a chance to see a video deposition where his partner, Jane Peterer, I think she was the one that's actually spilled the beans. She said, I'll give you an example. She said Gary would earn $200,000 for a quarter in his royalties, and Armin would say it was $20,000. He'd keep the $180,000 and tell Gary that he owed him for an advance. So he'd get the leftovers, or he'd just buy him a car and not pay him at all, that kind of stuff.
Where do things stand legally now with all that stuff? Is there any...
Well, Judy Worrell, she sued George, and she's at the point now where he's trying to figure out how to settle with her to get her out of his hair. So she's probably going to come off with a nice piece of money.
Good.
And like I said, she's the only one that's been able to do that. Because everybody else he sued, he even sued Bridgeport, I think, and finally got his masters back. And for another example, he sued the Black Eyed Peas for using Knee Deep. And he told me straight up, Linda, we're going to get a lot of money from the Black Eyed Peas. I'm going to sue them. And so when the lawsuit went through and he got the money, he kept every penny up for himself. Junie's daughter didn't get a dime. I didn't get a dime. And he walked away with all the money.
I really hope that that precedent that's set, that maybe that could set something up for the rest of you all, and I hope more things are coming to you in the future, because you deserve everything and more, especially with the legacy and what you guys provided to music history. It's
I'm
really
sorry to say that Gary sold his publishing to Bridgeport for, at the time, it was probably worth at least 1.5 million. He sold it for 250,000.
well,
all
like some
his
big
publishing.
package deal, like all this stuff.
So now Bridgeport owns all his publishing. He sold his BMI money to a company in LA called Royalty Funding, and he sold all his BMI publishing for, what did he get from them? About 18 grand. And he was getting like 13, 15 a quarter, 15,000. I'm talking about 13,000. So, and I tried my best to, I kept pointing to him in the contract, this is for perpetuity. You'll never get this stuff back. Do you realize what you're signing? And
You
he's
asked him that.
But see, what I didn't know was that he was sick. I didn't know he had cancer. He knew something was going on. He just wouldn't deal with it. He just was trying to act like it was going to go away. You know, I guess that macho thing, I'm okay, you know.
Wait a minute, I didn't know that. Wait a second. So I have a friend actually that I used to play music with who did the same thing. So did he know very clearly, like explicitly, that he was sick, or he just knew something was wrong? But
He
the
knew
doctor,
something was wrong, but he wouldn't go to the doctor. What really finally made him go, and this was like, he signed the contract with Bridgeport, I think, in December of 2009. By March of 2010, it got to the point where he couldn't play. His hands weren't working. I woke up one night and
his hands weren't working.
He couldn't. He told my sons, he said, I can't play. My hands are, something's wrong with my hands. I can't play. I woke up one morning and there was blood on the pillow, and I looked at him and I knew it was, I said, you have nosebleeds or something? He said, yeah. But I'm okay. Okay. Then I found out from Boogie that his head was hurting so bad he was actually banging his head against the wall trying to diffuse it or something, you know.
Oh, geez, because
he had brain cancer and lung cancer.
Oh goodness. And he was just too proud, I guess, right?
He finally, I finally dragged him to the doctor because I could tell something was really off, you know. And the doctor told him that by the time he actually went, he was in stage 4 cancer, and he needed to go in the hospital immediately. He comes out of the doctor's office, we're going on the road. And I'm like,
oh my
goodness. The guy just told you that you're, you know, I don't care what he says, we're going on the road. And it was so awful to watch him. Within the 2 weeks that we were out there, he was deteriorating so quickly. At one point, he couldn't even stand up anymore.
That you were out there. So did you go on the road, you mean?
Mm-hmm. And I'd be doing the show, and I'm trying to keep my eye on him. And he'd just be standing there like this. He couldn't play. He couldn't sing. He'd just be standing there. I guess he wanted to absorb the audiences one more time. And that's kind of how it felt, you know, because... And I asked George, I said, he's not listening to me. Would you please try to help me get him to go home and get in the hospital like he needs to be? I'm not going to tell a grown man what to do. I wanted to punch him in his face. I really did.
I bet.
I wanted to hit him so bad. I couldn't stand it.
That's, you know, what you said about he wanted to feel the audience. Is, by the way, thank you for sharing all of that, 'cause that's amazing. What you said about him wanting to feel the audience one more time, that makes sense to me, because whenever I know I say we, like everyone in the audience saw Gary, everybody just starts smiling. Like he was like the, I don't know what you call it, like the herald, like he was the glue that held everything together. He was always the first, like you said, like he was the first to come out and kind of get it going. And he'd be out there for a while warming up, maybe just playing guitar for a while, not even, you know, doing some instrumental for a while. That his voice, just like that soaring, powerful voice, the power behind that, I just know it made everybody feel so good. And then it's just interesting, and it feels good to know that that was going in the other direction too, almost to the point where he wasn't going to take care of himself, because it's just that feeling, that you know, that feeling of the music. I know that's probably what kept him there when you're talking to him about the money and being funny, or maybe other opportunities. I know he finally did do an opportunity. Let me talk to you about that Chango in Paris Vegas gig. Tell me about that, because that was a pretty big show.
Well, that was at UCLA's.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was a Vegas.
No. He was calling. Nenning used to call him Gus Vegas,
Got it.
and he
Got it.
really
That's why I was
wanted Gary
thinking
to
of
do that kind of. He wanted to take him to Las Vegas and get him into that kind of field, and so we recorded this stuff with Nenny. I don't know, back in the 70s, I guess. And so he decided he wanted to do a live performance of the stuff that we had recorded with him.
So like Afro-Cuban stuff?
Because we had a lot of conga players, Cuban. Most of the drummers were Cuban. Frankie Cash played drums, played record drums. I told you, like, Dermot Mulroney was playing cello right behind me.
I know, that's crazy. The actor, Dermot Mulroney.
Dermot Mulroney was.
Young Guns.
And I was like, what is he doing here? And I was like, oh, my God. And then you know some really cool folks.
Wow.
So it was just kind of like that's the day that he also went and did that royalty funding deal and sold his BMI stuff while we were out there doing that show.
Same time?
Mm-hmm. I think he did it that day before the show.
That was a different like branding for him because like he didn't have the diaper on, right?
No diaper. He had on a caftan. It was kind of like a wine color trimmed in gold. He looked like an African prince. I mean, he looked so good in a whole different genre, you know? And so when they brought it out, I'm like, are you going to wear that? And he's like, oh, you know what I normally wear? I said, but I think you need to try this one. I think you need to try this. I said, because with the whole vibe, we're going on, all the girls had on white and red berets or red sashes or something red. I think the guys also were in white. All the Cubans were in white and red.
Wow.
And here he's out there looking like an African prince. It was so cool.
How did it go? How was it received?
Oh, it went great. It went great. It was a really good show.
And
it was so much fun.
How come they didn't continue then, or was something funky about it?
We found out that Nenny was sick too. Then we didn't know he also had cancer. Okay. And he seemed like shortly after that he started going down real bad.
Maybe that's why he wanted to do the project, huh?
Mm-hmm. Actually, to see it and for it make it to a live show finally, you know, before he died. Mm-hmm.
Can I ask you, Sinbad, the comedian, Sinbad, isn't he like a big funketeer? Like I think he put on some show.
He did that.
Could you tell me about
Aruba.
That? In Aruba. So what was that? It sounded like it was like some very huge event.
It was like a funk festival. He had Cameo. He had P-Funk.
Sinbad put it together with Wow.
I think Mandrill was on it, if I'm not mistaken.
I love Mandrill.
Barkays, maybe. Yeah, the Barkays, I think they were on it too.
In Aruba. When was this?
This was probably in 2006.
I never even heard of it.
He did it 2 years in a row, and then that's when he fell out with his. I think he was on Fox. Fell out with Fox because he was using too many black professionals, and they were like, you know, he was trying to give everybody a shot, like casting and technical stuff, trying to get some of the brothers, get some of the black folks into the business, and they didn't seem to like that, and they decided to cancel his show.
That's whack, man. That's so beautiful that he did that show and he used his power to try to do something good.
Yeah, he was trying his best. When he had that TV show on, he was bringing all these black crews in, trying to give them some credits and stuff and let them get into the unions and all that kind of stuff. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, he was on Fox, and Fox didn't like that too much, and they decided to cancel his TV show.
I think he plays a little too, if I'm not mistaken. Sinbad, he might play a little bit. But I knew he supported the funk. That's cool. That's really cool. What other really huge shows did you guys have? There's that Central Park one.
Woodstock.
That
was awesome. That's on YouTube too.
That must have been nuts.
And it was like just, people for miles. I mean, I have never seen so many lights and so many. It was just, I know at least 300,000 people, if not more. The same thing with Central Park. It was just a sea of people as far as your eyes could go when he brought the mothership back out.
So many amazing years. I know that you were even like were you on the Grammys a couple times?
2 times. The first time with the Chili Peppers for Californication.
Right.
And that was kind of like scary because when we walked out on the stage, here's Michael Jackson, Tina Turner, Quincy Jones, Elizabeth Taylor, all these big heavyweights sitting in the front row, and I came up there and I was like, and I just thought, oh my gosh, this is huge. I think this was the year when Prince and Beyonce opened it up, and they did a duet together to open it all up. So I took a deep breath and I just said, okay, we got to do this. Let's go.
You know, whenever there's like a thing to hype up the P-Funk people, it seems to always fall short for y'all. I saw and I liked, but I heard that you didn't like. I took a trip to D.C. about 4 or 5 years ago, and I saw the African American Museum. There's a music section up top.
Mm-hmm.
There's a P-Funk section. There's like a Bootsy outfit. There's a
George
mothership
Clinton
there.
outfit, the mothership.
But I said, you're not a fan of that exhibit.
I didn't like because they gave the band like a little 8x10. And
Right, I remember
everything else was all about George and Bootsy. And Bootsy wasn't even in P-Funk that long. So
Right.
I mean, so to have him as the only other, I think my husband should have had his outfit, one of his outfits up there instead of Bootsy's. That did, and I spoke to someone at the
Yeah,
Smithsonian
definitely with
about
the
it.
diaper. Yeah, it's so iconic. And you spoke to somebody. Who did you speak to about it?
I can't remember his name offhand, but he's put another exhibit together, and they were using some of their clothing and stuff. And he had contacted Garrett. He said in 2018 when they were getting ready to put it together, and he said Garrett never returned his call. And then one night Garrett was fussing at me about, you're not helping me keep Dad's legacy alive. I said, what are you talking about? I said, everything I do you seem to not like, but I do it anyway because this is under my control. I'm sorry, but he left me in charge of this, and that's what I'm going to do. So I talked to the guy because there was this exhibit. I had found out about it, and I was trying to get him to use one of Gary's coats. And he said, well, it's closing down and it's too late. And he told me he had talked to Garrett 3 years ago about, when they were putting it together. And he never got back to him. And I said, oh, and he's got the nerve to be wearing me out about not taking care of his father's legacy. Thanks, So this was like maybe 6 months ago. So on Gary's birthday, they did a big spread in their website about him.
Good.
Trying to make up for it.
Good. At least they did that. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's important, and it's good that you're all advocating for that because that's really important. Because there's also, I don't know why, because he goes so far back, but was just that Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction.
Oh, that was fun. That we enjoyed that.
Oh, you did enjoy that. Okay,
but
okay.
the girls were kind of upset that we didn't get anything out of it.
Well, yeah, right.
They just always seem to underestimate our contribution to P-Funk. And we've talked to them. Shirley Hayden, especially from the Parlettes, has talked
Shirley
to them.
Hayden, yeah, I've
Hall of
interviewed
Fame,
her.
trying to get them to give us some kind of recognition, and it's just never happened.
What's up, Shirley? You all deserve that recognition. That always kind of disturbs me and irks me. So I'm here just trying to pump that up. Yeah.
It just seemed to me, first of all, when I first met them, they didn't have any girls. And I had told Bernie, I said, if you ever decide to put some girls in the group, give me a holler. I want to audition. And when I finally saw them with Jeanette and Debbie, I said, well, they finally did that, finally put some females out there. And I thought that we made them look good. We made them sound good because we made it sound more like the records because we'd all recorded them, so we knew the stuff inside out. And it just kind of gave them a whole nother feel,
It's wonderful.
But they just never wanted to give us any kind of respect.
And people sample those licks and stuff you guys are singing and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you deserve it.
Like when De La Soul did their Me, Myself, and I, they sampled Gary all over it. Guess who got
Gary's all over that.
Guess
That's
who
right.
got the money for that?
Not him.
George.
That's right.
Because he
that's
contacted
him,
them.
the whole
They
thing.
live in D.C. They have a restaurant kind of close to where we lived.
Who does?
And De La Soul.
Oh, okay.
At least one of the guys in De La Soul. And so he used to come over to the house sometime, and Gary said, "Man, how come you all didn't pay me for the song?" He said, "Oh, we did. We just gave it to George." So
no.
Gary's like, "Thanks." You know what? I saw him actually go at George one time, and this was shortly before he got sick. Or maybe he was already sick and it was just going to get it off his chest. We were in Las Vegas at the Hard Rock Cafe. We had done a show, and we were just kind of chilling afterwards, getting something to eat. And George said something to Gary that ticked him off, and he went at him like a bull terrier. And I was like, finally,
You're all here.
Yes. I said, and he said, George asked me, what's wrong with him? I said, you.
Do you remember what he said that ticked him off?
I can't remember. No, it was just something that just kind of at the spur of the moment, he just flipped and he got in his face and he's, and I'm like, Oh,
He finally flashed on
yeah,
him.
he finally snapped. I said, thank you, Jesus. Finally, you know. Oh, something else you didn't mention. We did some stuff with this group from Asheville, North Carolina called the Big Old Nasty Get Down.
Let's talk about that. Big Old Nasty Get Down.
That was such a fun gig. The last time I actually toured with the group was with them just before COVID hit, and we did like 2 weeks down south and ended up in D.C. at this club in D.C. in Georgetown. They were such a cool group to work with. No egos. And all of them are professional, like college trained musicians. And they had such a nice vibe about them. There's no egos, no head trips going on, no hairy druggies going on. That's just a lot of weed. They smoked a lot of weed, mucho marijuana. But we did a show in Asheville at this big theater. It was like a big festival kind of deal, and the Roots were on there. This was just before they got hired to go on TV and do that show. And I'm looking at them, and I'm like, this guy's playing a tuba in a funk band. This is crazy. And I had no idea how big they were going to get.
Wow.
They had just gotten got their deal and were just getting blown up. And the next thing I knew, here they're on television.
I really love talking to you. What are you going to be working on in the future? What do you have coming up? Are there any more stories, any more recordings?
I have been trying to do autobiography. I've been working on it off and on for about 4 years. I thought I had found a ghostwriter because, like I said, I get involved. I paint.
That would be great.
I'd make jewelry, and I get into a little bag or something, and I
You make jewelry, right?
Mm-hmm, I paint.
Wow.
I have a great picture I did of Gary from a photograph someone took of him.
That you painted?
Mm-hmm. In
Nice.
watercolors. I use acrylics. I use watercolor oil, just whatever my head. Like I said, I'm very artistic just by nature, I guess. And so when I get something in my head, I have to figure out how to get it out. So I make jewelry, and it just kind of helps me think, keeps my head in the game.
Good. That's good for your mind.
I thought I had a ghostwriter, and we were kind of vibing for about 3 or 4 months. But he's also a musician, and he works at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. He does kind of like, I guess, their technical stuff, computer stuff or something. And I was telling him some of the stories about my family and Gary's family and stuff. And then at the last minute, just around July, he just said, Linda, he said, I know you want a book. He said, I'm trying to sell articles because I can't really commit to anything further than that, and I haven't gotten any bites on it. So I've got this tour coming up, and I'm not going to be able to finish it. And I'm like, oh, God. Because I thought if I could tell it to someone else that he could write it and I'd get it done finally, So I'm back to square one with that again.
We got to get that done. I want to hear that. I want to see that. I want to read that.
There's so much history in my family.
So many stories.
I have a violin from the 1700s. One of my great uncles who passed for white, because most of my family is really light skinned, with straight hair and all that kind of stuff. And so he played with the Baltimore Symphony, and I have his violin.
Wow, that's
and it
amazing.
says right inside 1776.
Wow.
So no black person could have played with the Baltimore Symphony unless he was passing during that time,
That is an amazing story in itself, just that.
One of my great aunts was hooked up with President Buchanan, the only single president, and he was passing her off as his niece because, once again, she didn't look black.
Really?
And so she's hosting the White House dinners and stuff, and she's my great aunt on my mother's side.
Can I ask you about, real quick before we go, can I ask you about takes? How many takes would Gary usually do if he recorded something? He seems like he would do it like in 1 or 2 takes.
That's what we had. Our production company was called One Take because we kind of pride ourselves on doing that, getting done on the first take instead of having to overdub or, you might double, but, never. We just go right on through. from start to finish, and it's done.
I could tell that. That's that live feel. How about you? How do you like to record? Do you like to just get one and done? You like to keep
Same
doing
thing.
it over and over?
Yeah, no, because like I said, I feel like if I keep doing it, I'm going to, kind of lose the vibe.
Yeah, I agree with that. I hate recording stuff over and over and over again. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is such an honor to speak with you, an honor to have you here. I know you had to kind of travel far, walk about some steps and stuff to get here. And it's a real honor to have you. We should take, before you go, if you could we should take some picture with your comic book.
Okay.
And we can post that too.
All right.
And thank you so much for coming out.
Well, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed myself.
It's an honor talking to you. And I hope you'll come on again and we can talk to you some more.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Because we didn't get into this Stokely Carmichael stuff. I mean, my life has been such a roller coaster. I've been in and out of so many different things.
Actually, before we go, can I ask you about that? So you used to organize, thank you for reminding me, with Stokely Carmichael and...
Eldridge and Kathleen Cleve Sellers. They were like the head of a SNCC.
So was that when you were in college?
Mm-hmm.
So what did that entail? Like, what does that mean when you used to organize with them?
What happened was Stokely did a speech at our college, and he got everybody so pumped that a girlfriend of mine and myself decided to get all the students together and do a protest. So we're walking down the main street in Nashville. I was at Tennessee State at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Walking down the street in Nashville, and all these kids, and all of a sudden the police started shooting at us. So everybody.
That's like Kent State.
Pretty much. Nobody got killed. I don't know if they were rubber bullets because I went once again into a phone booth and ducked down, and
Those
glass
phone
was
booths.
shattering all around me. And I
Oh
said,
my
no, I
God.
must not have got. It must have been rubber bullets because I should have been dead.
Oh my God.
And I came out of there. I was covered. I had cuts all over my face and stuff, and blood everywhere. It was creepy. But
Oh my
when
goodness.
Stokely found out that the two of us had kind of organized it, he started talking to me about, and he'd come to D.C. and invite me to some of their meetings when they were talking strategy about something they were getting ready to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I got really close with Cleve. And he took me he was teaching at Cornell. He invited me up to Cornell, taught me how to shoot a rifle. I almost broke my shoulder because it hit me, and I was like, oh my God. So here, take this. I don't think I'm not the shooter type, okay? Take it back. Yeah, we got real close.
So what? That's amazing. I can't believe that. Just that in itself. What would you do with them, or what did you wind up doing for the organization?
Well, I didn't stay with them long because I think this is around the time when I started my Pan Am stuff. So when that's right, and still slowly moved to Africa. That's kind of thing when things were winding down.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, Cleveland had gotten shot at Orangeburg they call it the Orangeburg Massacre, South Carolina. Stokely was the FBI was all over him, trying to figure out a way to put him in jail. When they killed Fred Hampton, and everybody started getting scared,
Mm-hmm.
Didn't feel like we could do this without losing someone special. So that's kind of when things started falling apart. And he went over to Africa, married Miriam Makeba, and stayed over there.
You've had so many intense experiences. It's
Yeah.
almost like too much for me to even listen to, because it's frightening. It's amazing. Like the people whose lives you've touched
And touched me.
yeah, it's just like, it's really incredible. Thank you for reminding me about that. I forgot to bring that up because I definitely wanted to ask you about that. Do you want to say hello to anybody before we go? Give anybody a shout out? Any of
yes.
your people?
My beautiful granddaughter, London, who constantly keeps in touch with me. She's been texting me all morning like, Grandma, where are you? You're not responding. I'm like, well, yes. I said, I'm on a plane. I can't really talk to you right now. She's like, oh, that's so cool. She's like 7. She so much reminds me of myself at that age.
How
she's
so?
bright. She's artistic. She draws and paints. She sings, and she could dance. She's just very entertaining. And she has this wonderful spirit about her that I just love. And they're always got a smile on her face, always very loving. And she's just a very dear, special kid.
That's fantastic. Well, shout out to London.
Yeah, and my son Marshall, because
Hey, Marshall.
he's not doing too well. He's got this disease that we're trying to figure out how to save him.
Okay.
So that's kind of a
Well,
concern
I'm going
of
to send
mine.
him love then.
Yeah,
okay.
and prayers,
Much love to
please.
Marshall.
He
Yes,
needs it.
yes.
Trying to keep him above ground, and there's just so much going on right now. You know, I'm thinking about maybe when Judy gets her lawsuit settled, she's kind of turned me on to her attorney to make. She said, "Let me get mine first, and I'll make sure you get hooked up as well."
Yeah.
Because it's time. George has gotten away with this too much, too long, for years.
It's time, and you need your monies, right?
It would
That's
be nice
right.
to have my own again. You know, that's what my dream is, to get back on my own feet, on my own terms.
If I hope if you ever need help, I would definitely love to lend any of my editing or ghostwriting skills for like another comic book or something.
Okay.
So please let us know. And then also, I know I'm going to try to go to that Funketeers ball next year. How do you say it? Bethesda.
Bethesda.
Bethesda. I'm going to go there next. When do you usually do it? And
It's
you always do it.
always in September.
Always in September, right?
This year it was September 30th. I can't remember when it was last year, but it's always in September.
All right.
Now they're talking about doing something on New Year's Eve. The same coalition that puts that on in Tony Cam's territory, Lynchburg, Virginia. He sent me a text a couple of days ago about it and asked me if I was interested. I said, I have no idea how to get to Lynchburg from Columbus. So I probably won't attend, but, you know, he's throwing that out there, too. They're going to try to do something else.
That's beautiful.
Instead of just the Funketeers Ball every year.
All right. I'll be checking for that. More and more funk events. That's what we need. That's what we need. All right. Well, I wish you well. I just
Thank you.
thank you. Safe travels back. Thank you for coming all the way to San Francisco to
Thank
talk to
you.
me. It's an honor. And thank you so much. May the funk be with you.
And you as well.
Thank you. All right, everybody. I'll smell you later. Peace.